Why millennials want a simpler life. They're tired of optimizing everything. A millennial is sitting on the couch after a long day, looking at videos of small houses, not mansions, not luxury apartments, but rather small kitchens, quiet porches, one bookshelf, a garden that looks manageable, a town where the coffee shop closes at 6, and nobody seems to be building a personal brand. They know the fantasy is edited. The tiny house probably has no storage. The garden requires work. The calm little job probably pays less. The quiet town still has traffic, bills, and repairs. And yet the image lands, because the appeal is not really about the house. It is about the feeling. Less pressure, less noise, less to manage, less to prove. Millennials have developed a particular longing for simplicity. They talk about deleting apps, moving somewhere cheaper, owning less, working fewer hours, having a smaller home, buying one good thing instead of five, leaving jobs that look impressive, but consume every available part of the week. From the outside, this can look like withdrawal. Maybe millennials lost ambition. Maybe they became tired of adulthood. Maybe they are romanticizing a life that would still have problems. And sometimes that is true. But the desire itself is not hard to understand because millennials were raised on the promise that more would create a better life. More education, more options, more productivity, more technology, more self improvement, more ambition. But in practice, more often created more work. Force 1. Millennials were taught to maximize their potential. Millennials grew up hearing some version of the same message. You can be anything, which sounds freeing. But it also quietly means you are responsible for becoming something impressive. Find the right career, use your talents, build a meaningful life, keep learning, keep improving, do not waste your potential. The self became a project with no obvious finish line. A job was not enough. It should be fulfilling. A hobby was not enough. It could become a side business. A free evening was not enough. It could be used for networking, exercise, meal preparation, skill building, content creation, or finally organizing the closet. Even rest became something to optimize. The right sleep routine, the right morning routine, the right app to measure whether the rest worked. Millennials were told to become their best selves, but best kept moving. There was always another credential, another habit, another income stream, another version of the person they could become if they worked a little harder. So simplicity began to feel like relief, not from growth, but from the endless demand to maximize. Force 2. Technology made life more convenient, but also more crowded. Modern life contains real conveniences. You can order food, pay bills, watch almost anything, work from home, message friends, compare prices, and solve minor problems without leaving the couch. That is real. But convenience did not always remove work. Often, it changed the shape of the work. Every service has an account. Every account has a password. Every app has notifications. Every device has settings. Every subscription has a renewal date. Every platform has a new interface that moved the button you were finally used to pressing. The phone became a calendar, office, camera, wallet, map, television, newsstand, shopping mall, social space, and emotional weather system. That is useful. It is also crowded. The same device used to relax is the device where work arrives. The same screen used to talk to friends is where bills appear, headlines escalate, strangers argue, and somebody explains that the way you have been washing your towels is wrong. Technology made more of life accessible, but it also made more of life present at the same time. So the fantasy of simplicity often includes distance from the screen. Not no technology, just fewer things asking for attention through it. Force 3. Too many choices turned everyday life into administration. A simpler life is appealing partly because ordinary life now requires so much management. There are dozens of phone plans, hundreds of shows, endless product versions, multiple delivery options, different insurance networks, different retirement accounts, different ways to work, date, eat, parent, travel, decorate, and organize a household. Choice can be useful, but choice also creates paperwork for the mind. Every option has to be compared. Every decision creates the possibility that another option was better. A grocery trip becomes label reading. A vacation becomes tab management. A restaurant becomes a review research. A job change becomes salary research, culture research, commute research, cost of living research, and a careful attempt to predict whether the manager has the emotional stability of an adult. Millennials are not only doing tasks, they are administering their own lives, scheduling, comparing, updating, canceling, renewing, tracking, remembering. Simplicity becomes attractive because it reduces the number of systems that need maintenance. Fewer things, fewer accounts, fewer decisions, fewer opportunities to discover that you forgot to turn off auto renew. Force 4. Traditional status symbols became less attainable and less convincing. For earlier generations, success was often represented through recognizable objects: the house, the car, the stable career, the upgraded kitchen. Millennials inherited those symbols, but the path toward them became less predictable. Housing grew harder to reach, careers became less stable, debt followed people into adulthood, and many traditional rewards required more money, maintenance, and confidence than people felt they had. At the same time, the symbols themselves became less persuasive. A larger house means more rooms to clean. A nicer car means a larger payment. A prestigious job may mean longer hours, more availability, and a personality that has to remain professionally enthusiastic before coffee. The old symbols still matter to many people, but they no longer explain success as clearly as they once did. Peace began competing with prestige. Time began competing with income. Autonomy began competing with title. A smaller life could start to look richer if it contained more control over the day. Simplicity is not always about having less. Sometimes it is about needing less from things that no longer prove what they once promised to prove. Force 5. Burnout changed the definition of success. Millennials entered adulthood during years when hustle was treated like a personality. Sleep less, work smarter, build something, monetize the hobby, turn the setback into motivation, turn the motivation into content, then keep the second job, because the first one might disappear. For a while, exhaustion could be framed as evidence of ambition. But exhaustion changes the question. At first, the question is, how much can I accomplish? Later, it becomes, how long can I live like this? Burnout makes certain rewards look different. The promotion may not feel worth the constant availability. The higher salary may not feel like success if every Sunday is spent dreading Monday. The busy calendar may stop looking important and start looking like a warning. So success begins to shrink into quieter things: enough money, enough time, work that ends, a home that feels calm, relationships that do not need to be scheduled 6 weeks ahead, a weekend that is not being used to recover from the week. This is not necessarily a rejection of ambition. It is ambition being redirected toward a life that remains livable. Force 6. Simplicity became a form of control. This is probably the emotional center. Millennials cannot control housing markets, they cannot control layoffs, they cannot control inflation, platform changes, healthcare costs, political instability, climate anxiety, or the grocery store reorganizing itself again. But they can sometimes control the number of objects in a room, the number of apps on a phone, the number of commitments on a calendar, the amount of work they allow into the evening. The simplicity fantasy offers something modern. Life often does not. A clear boundary: this is enough, the house is small enough, the job asks enough, the schedule contains enough, the day does not need to become more efficient, the self does not need to become more marketable. That sense of enough can feel radical inside a culture built around improvement. And this is where the honest part comes in. Simple lives are not automatically easy lives. Owning less does not remove financial pressure. Moving somewhere quiet does not remove loneliness. A smaller home still needs repairs. A slower job can still be frustrating. A garden can fail. A minimalist apartment can become another aesthetic project requiring expensive containers and matching neutral colors. Simplicity can become one more thing to optimize, one more identity to perform, one more impossible life that looks peaceful because the mess is outside the camera frame. But the desire still reveals something real. Millennials do not necessarily want smaller lives. They want lives with less noise around the things that matter, less work around rest, less performance around identity, less management around convenience, less anxiety around ordinary decisions, less pressure to turn every interest into income, and every day into evidence of progress. They are not always trying to escape adulthood. They are trying to remove some of the machinery that adulthood accumulated. So somewhere, a millennial deletes an app, cancels a subscription, leaves one evening unscheduled, buys nothing, turns off a notification, looks around a room and decides it does not need anything else. The life is not suddenly perfect. The bills are still there. The job still exists. The future remains uncertain. But for a moment, there is less to manage, less to prove, less noise between the person and the life they are actually trying to live. And sometimes, simpler does not mean smaller. Sometimes it means finally being able to notice what was already enough.